Welcome to the Christian Author Show. From fiction to enlightenment, we offer you all forms of faith-inspired books. So sit back and relax. Here's your host, Danielle Hampson.
It is not often that I come across a thriller in the Christian genre, but today is the day. Welcome to the Christian Author Show. I'm Danielle Hampson. Mourning Reign is the title, and its author is Edward Hancock II, and he is with me today to talk about his book. Welcome to the show, Edward.
Oh, thank you.
Born with spina bifida, Ed, a constant dreamer by his own admission, saw his dreams become a reality at the age of 10 when he wrote his first coherent short story. By the age of 14, he had developed a deep love for writing poetry, and by 19, he was a staff member of the Kilgore College Ranger Yearbook and Flair newspaper, where he won more than 20 awards from the Texas Intercollegiate Press Association. To date, Ed has written over 15 short stories, more than 100 poems, and he has published 4 novels. He is a member of the Northeast Texas Writers Organization, the Oklahoma Writers Federation, as well as the East Texas Christian Writers and others. He is also a public speaker, regularly speaking to children's groups and disabled groups on such topics as life with no excuses and never give up on a dream. Edward, what is the significance of the book titled Mourning Reign?
Well, it actually comes from a section of the book where one of the lead cops in the story, receives a package from the terrorist, the villain, and it's, of course, it's an audio tape, and on the tape, the terrorist goes into his ranting, and it's a lot of stuff that the main character is just kind of ignoring. But one of the sentences that he says, blood will flow and mourning will reign, and that is actually where the title came from, and it's interesting to kind of say that the title actually came to me first, which for me is rare. That the book was actually born from that title.
Now, without giving anything away, would you give us a very brief synopsis of the book?
Well, in short, it would basically be, if you can imagine, September the 11th style attacks coming to a small town, specifically East Texas in the book. That's what it's about, basically September the 11th coming to small town East Texas.
So you told us that already that the title came first and the book was actually born from the title, but what actually inspired you to write the story?
That would have to be the events of 9/11. Like most people, I sat and I watched those events on TV.
Right.
I wasn't there when the buildings fell, and I didn't feel the rattling in my chest and all of that stuff. And so, but writers, I guess, at least all the writers I know, are naturally a little bit paranoid. So my thought as I watched the buildings fall and the plane crash into Pennsylvania, my thought was, when are they coming from me? And that's where this story really kind of grew out of, was a little bit of paranoia and an overactive imagination, I guess you might say.
So the story opens right in the middle of the action. Would you tell us a little bit about the harrowing scene that launches us headlong into this fast-paced thriller?
Yes, it opens up with a terrorist-style attack on the Longview Police Department. A terrorist, he's strapped with an explosive vest, but he goes in there with guns blazing. I mean, he's got automatic weapons, he's shooting people at will, and then people are dying. There's police officers that are trying to take him down, but he's got body armor on, so they can't take him down. And in the end of the scene, he blows himself up and takes a lot of the police department and a lot of innocent lives with him, unfortunately.
Now, your story is set in East Texas. Why is that important?
I think it's mostly significant. They say, write what you know, and I'm an East Texas boy. I was born in Joliet, Illinois, but I moved here when I was 2, so East Texas is what I know.
Right.
And I do a lot of reading in detective stories, and most of them seem to be, they're set in California, or they're set in New York, or they're set in the mean streets of Chicago, and just wanted to write something that had a different feel and a different pace to it, and East Texas definitely has a different pace to it. For anyone that's ever been here, they'll tell you it's different than any part of the world.
What sort of research did you do, if any at all, or do you actually have any experience in law enforcement?
I don't have any personally. I do have a lot of relatives and friends that have worked at various levels of government and police, law enforcement type entities, whether it's the local Gilmer and Longview police departments, or I even have a couple of friends that have in the past worked for the FBI. And a lot of it was just talking with them, and I had an opportunity to be out in the public and work for an insurance agency that afforded me the opportunity to meet a lot of people that were themselves police officers, and of course I'm naturally a people watcher, so when I'd be in a mall somewhere and I'd see two police officers, security guards or whatever watching, talking, and I just watched how they interacted. So
Right.
a lot of my research was just being nosy, I guess, and getting out there in the world and reading a lot.
Well, in your story, there's also a family pet that plays a fairly big role. Now, for the animal lovers out there, would you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, my wonderful Brandy Mendez. I'm a pet lover. I've always been a pet lover, and for anyone who's had a pet, you know that they are just soulful creatures. They love, and this is not something that's actually come out in Mourning Reign, but knowing that this is a series, I do know that Alex himself in his childhood had never had a pet. And so when Brandy Mendez comes along and she's in his life, they have this instant bond that he eats it up. He just loves her. She becomes a child to him that he protects just as much as his own biological children.
But what is it, a cat, a dog? What is it?
It's a dog. She's a golden retriever.
Oh, okay. Now, the final confrontation takes place in an elementary school. How challenging was it to write a scene that involved children so closely?
I can honestly say it was the most challenging thing I've written in my 38 years of life. I did a lot of research on terrorism to write this story. Terrorism is one of the central themes. I read a lot of books on Osama bin Laden and Abu Nidal and, Palestinian terrorism, and I learned a lot about how the terrorists think and how they react and how they feel. I did a lot of research on, since it's Islamic terrorism, I did a lot of research on Islam itself and how a traditional Islamist might think versus how a fundamentalist Islamist might think. And to come up with these evil people, I got in there and watched graphic scenes of their terrorist actions. And for this particular scene and for the scenes involving Brandy Mendez and her protecting the family, I took myself to a dark place that I really have never been to before, and I really feel like I'm blessed, and it's only by the grace of God that I really came out of that with my sanity intact.
It sounds like it was extremely taxing to write that. Now, are your characters, I'm assuming your characters are pure fiction, so did you draw from people that you know or just out of your imagination?
I think it was a little bit of both, honestly. I've always said about Alex, ever since I first imagined him, I said that Alex is kind of that part of me that never really got to be, whereas, there were just certain things that I could do through Alex that maybe I couldn't necessarily do in the real person. But then you have, a character like Lisa, his wife, who is just a complete makeup, she's just a combination of several friends and family members and strong women that I know in my life. But then you have a character like his mother, who is completely from my imagination. She resembles no one in my life she just kind of came to me one night and I wrote her, and she's been there ever since. So it's really kind of a combination, I guess you might say.
Well, Edward, your book is a thriller, yet you requested to be interviewed on the Christian author show rather than under a more general heading. Why is that?
Well, because it's actually a Christian thriller. First of all, I am a Christian. I'm very much a powerfully, strong Christian believer in the Lord Jesus Christ. And I write, like I said, Alex is kind of the me that I never got to be. There's a lot of me in him. And his personal struggles with faith and religious issues mirror a lot of the same struggles that a lot of the same paths that I've walked in my life. And, I have a tendency, I question things that a lot of people take on face value because I really want to know. I want everything that I believe to be rock solid. And Alex does that too. He questions everything. And, this is something that it's very understated in Mourning Reign, but, this is going to be something that as the books go on and more books are written, more stories are told, there'll be more to come out about his faith walk.
So will your book then also appeal to a more secular audience?
I think so. I think everybody at least most people I know, they kind of ride the fence between secular and sacred. I mean, that your average person today is really kind of a gray area rather than a black or white. And in all honesty, the reviews that I'm getting on Amazon and some of the other things really tell me that the secular audience does, in fact, enjoy it, and they, whereas they might not necessarily relate to a faith struggle, they relate to struggle as a whole, and so they can translate that to whatever area in their life they may be struggling with.
Well, you have written already a number of books and a lot of short stories and, of course, poems as well. So how important is the element of faith in all of your writings?
Well, I guess it's probably the central theme to my life. You know, it's who I am, and so I try to I make it a point. I don't shove my faith down anyone's throat, as they say. I'm not a person that feels like I have all the answers. I'm a person that has a lot of questions. I've matured a lot in my faith over the years, but I think my faith walk is what's very important, because it's my endless search for faith, and that is mirrored in everything I think that I write, whether it be insecurity or security.
Now, you were born with spina bifida. First of all, tell us a little bit, very briefly, what that is, and how did that condition actually play into your becoming a writer?
Well, without going into a lot of technical details, spina bifida it's a neurological defect. It's a spinal, as the name suggests, a spinal defect. There's varying degrees of severity. What it does, there's a certain point on your spine where, from that point down, the nerves no longer connect, and anything that's controlled by that particular nerve set doesn't function. And obviously, the higher up it is, the more severe the spina bifida. It just so happens I have a relatively minor, all things considered, form of it. But to get to the second question, how does it play into me becoming a writer? I honestly think is very much the single most important reason why I'm a writer. I have long said, if I didn't have spina bifida, I probably would have played football and played basketball and played sports like my father and my uncles and my cousins did. Or, I have a deep abiding love for the military, and I most assuredly would have joined the military, probably the Marines or something, and in this day and age of war, been likely killed or wounded in combat.
Right.
So I think that if I had not been, I feel like God wanted me to share my message with the world, being that not everybody has the Christian faith figured out. Not everybody is perfect. Not everybody walks with confidence in everything that they do. There's room for, it's kind of like the saying, God doesn't call the qualified, he qualifies the called. And that's the central theme in a lot of my writing. And if I hadn't been a writer, I couldn't give that message to the world.
Right. Now, overall, what benefits will your buyer get from reading your book?
Well, hopefully the biggest benefit they'll get will be just enjoying a good story that doesn't involve a lot of, gratuitous sex and worldliness and godlessness. The one thing that has been lacking until recently, in the last 5 or 10 years, really, there's not been an abundance of good quality literature that Christians and believers, whether you're struggling or you're firm in your faith, that you could really enjoy. You had your Left Behind series and a few others, but if you just wanted a good story, you maybe had 2 or 3 shelves in Barnes & Noble. There's been an influx of that, and I'm a part of that, and hopefully that's the main thing that they can take away from it, is just enjoying a good detective story without seeing, him having an affair with every woman,
right,
or smoking and drinking to ease the pain of his past. He's just a normal family guy that wants to go out there and serve the community.
Now, you refer to this book as being part of the Mendes series. What other books are in this series?
Well, this is the launch pad. This will be the kind of the takeoff of it. I refer to it as the series because I have, counting this one, about 25 books planned out and ordered. So as of right now, the series consists of one book. But it will be, I just finished the follow-up to this, so hopefully there will be more coming in the future.
So, Edward, while we're waiting for the other books in the series to come out, in what format is this one available, and where can we purchase it?
This one is available, it's in the Kindle format. It's not available in the Nook yet. We're still working to get it available on the Nook, but it is available primarily in paperback, and you can actually get it anywhere books are sold online. And also, you can go into a brick-and-mortar bookstore. If they're not carrying it, they can order.
They can order, yeah.
The bookstores around here are carrying it.
And what about your own website, Edward?
The best way to find me right now is on Facebook. It's just facebook.com/Edward Hancock II. I'm also on Twitter @Edward Hancock II, and those will be the best ways to really keep in touch with me right now.
Okay, wonderful. Well, you know, I don't get a lot of thrillers on the Christian Author Show, so I'm glad that you decided to come on this particular program to talk about your book, Mourning Reign. Thank you very much, Edward, and good luck with the rest of the series.
Thank you very much, and I look forward to hearing from everybody that reads the book, and I hope you all enjoy it and stick with me and Alex.
This is a thrilling story unlike the typical East Coast-West Coast drama. The East Texas setting and characters make the story unique, suspenseful, entertaining, and to quote one reviewer, a refreshing contrast to the New York counterpart. So go out there and get this Christian thriller, Mourning Reign by author Edward Hancock II. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are done with today's show, and to find out more Christian and other authors and their books, I invite you to visit theauthorsbookclub.com. Check that website, as many of our show guests and their books are featured right there. And if you are an author yourself, this is a good place for you to list your own book and to show it to the world. That website again is theauthorsbookclub.com. Thank you for listening, and please join me next time with another great Christian author and book on the Christian Author Show. I'm Danielle Hampson, and may God continue to keep you safe and hear your prayers.
Thank you for listening, and tune in next time for another great book on the Christian Author Show. To find out more about the show, visit thechristianauthorsshow.com.